All right, thank you so much, Emma, for doing the intro. And thank you, everyone who's joining us today to catch up on the latest of what we're working on. We appreciate your attendance. So just quickly here at the beginning, I always like to kind of go over some of the terms that we'll be using throughout the presentation, just so I'm not speaking foreign jargon that nobody understands. So in the FIPS world, FIPS obviously stands for Federal Information Processing Standards. It's a standard that was set up back in the 90s, basically to say, you know, if there's if there's cryptography available that can be used to secure information going over the open internet, and if that information is sensitive, the government just wanted to make sure that the strongest forms of cryptography were in use. And some examples would be like, we've got the RSA public key algorithm. You can use it for signing and verification. It supports multiple different key sizes. And FIPS will say that you can use RSA, that's fine, it's a good algorithm, but you have to be using keys for signing that are at least 2048 bits or greater, where with RSA you can do sign operations with keys as small as 512 bits, or even smaller if you custom build your RSA algorithm. You could even do a 1-bit sign technically, but it wouldn't do a whole lot, and it could only sign one other bit of information. So it might not be very useful, but that was the goal. Is the government wanted to come up with the strongest keys, or at least acceptable keys, the lowest tolerance key sizes to be used, and the algorithms that they trusted. And then they partnered with the Canadian government, so we ended up with a US and Canadian solution. And both of those operate under the NIST banner. So NIST is a US-based government institution. They publish and host all the certificates on their website. NIST stands for the National Institute of Standards and Technology. And then underneath of NIST, we have the CMVP body. And I'll digress here slightly. So NIST comes up with the standards. The CMVP then enforces and encourages adoption of those standards, and they're also in charge of validating the modules. And then under the CMVP, we have the CAVP, who's in charge of testing the algorithms to make sure they're functioning correctly. And all those three bodies work together to accomplish FIPS validations as we know them today. The ACVP is the Automated Cryptographic Validation Protocol. It's what we use to talk to the servers now that implement the CAVP algorithm testing. So it's just the protocol used to talk to the CAVP servers. We have the NVLAP, which stands for National Voluntary Lab Accreditation Program. And that's the body that certifies third-party laboratories that are non-government labs that are approved to basically work with vendors like wolfSSL that makes cryptography. Those labs work with us to make sure we have all of our ducks in a row, all our I's dotted and T's crossed, before we ever submit stuff to the CAVP, the CMVP, or NIST for review. And that's just to make sure that the process goes more smoothly once we submit something, as opposed to, you know, like getting rejected for many, many cycles before you ever get something approved. So we deal with all the rejections at the lab level, get everything ready to go, and then we finally submit to the government agencies that oversee this program. SP stands for Security Policy, and that's the document that basically just says what your module is capable of, all the proper uses of it, and you know what would be an improper use of it, etc. The user guide is often actually called the Cryptographic Officer Guidance Manual, or COGM for short, but we use user guide, UG, here at wolfSSL, and we have since the very beginning of our FIPS program. And these two terms, COGM and UG, are interchangeable. within the NIST documentation, so we went with UG. OE stands for an operational environment, and that just means the chipset, the operating system, and the cryptographic module itself. There's this other thing called the tested configuration, which is the last bullet here. And that also incorporates the form factor that the testing was performed on. And this is often a point of confusion amongst our customers. You know, if we test and certify their OE, then when the tested configuration gets listed on the certificate, because that form factor is in there, they're often concerned, oh, my product isn't there. And it just because your product doesn't appear in the tested configuration does not mean that the CMVP would not back your claims of FIPS validation on a separate form factor. As long as the chip and the OS and the module were all identical, you would still be validated. So getting that form factor listed in the tested configuration is mostly just a marketing tactic for some companies, and some of our customers will have us test the same chipset, OS, and module combination on 2 or 3 different form factors just for marketing reasons, because they want all of those form factors to appear on the certificate. And then why is FIPS important? Obviously, we're trying to protect sensitive information, like I said at the beginning. Cryptography can be disturbed by the silicon that it's running on. And we've seen this a couple of times, like we had an Atmel chip we were testing at one point where everything compiled fine, but then as soon as we started processing CAV-P vectors, we saw failures in the AES algorithm. And it turned out to be a bug in the hardware itself that was causing those failures. There were bits flipping intermittently. So we submitted a report to Atmel. They fixed the bug, got us new production hardware within a month, and then we were able to complete the validation at the end of that project. Cryptography can also be disturbed by the operating system that it's running on, and we've seen examples of this too. We were doing a Mac OS test a few years back, and we had already validated Mac OS version 12, and we moved to the next variant, and there was a Clang compiler on that OS that had a bug in it, and parts of the OS were misbehaving because of that. We submitted a report to both Mac and the toolchain provider that was affecting the way the operating system portions were executing and causing issues and that was with the SHA algorithm on that one. Mac OS fixed the bug. The bug is unfortunately still in the toolchain to this day, and that's what this last one is about as well, is that same event. We reported it to Clang. The CLang compiler to this day still has the same bug in it, and we can reproduce it, and we test every new release they put out just to see, because we like to be aware of it. So the agenda for today is we'll be covering our post-quantum full submission that's coming up. We've got a couple new services that we're also announcing today. So we're going to start doing level 2 and level 3 validations with BYOH, and that means bring your own hardware. We'll bring the software, and I'll go over this more on that slide. We also are going to start doing custom tuned full submissions on demand, and I'll go into that, explaining a little more about what that means down below. And then we'll be talking about OE editions, past, present, and future, and where we're at on that. So for our upcoming post-quantum full submission, right now we're working on a full submission that will be bringing in the SRTP KDF algorithm, AES XTS, AES cipher feedback, EDDSA, and then the Shake algorithms. And there's a couple of other new features like a GCM streaming mode and some other stuff. As soon as that full submission is wrapped up, we hope to have it done by the end of the month here. We'll begin working on the next full submission, which will be our post-quantum full submission. And so we still have a little bit of a runway like I said, about a 30-day window where if you need post-quantum and you need that time to market and you can't really wait to do an OE edition on the back end once we receive the cert, which is our traditional service that we offer, you can let us know, get us your hardware today, and we can try to get it in on the initial full submission. That way, on day one, when we receive our cert, your OE is already there and ready to go. The post-quantum algorithms we'll be doing is MLChem, MLDSA, and we'll only be doing the verifies for LMS and XMSS. It requires a level 3 module to be doing sign operations and key generation for those. So this first one will be a level 1 module, and so we will only be doing the verifies for those two. So the charter member opportunity, that's what I was just talking about. So yeah, if you can get us your OE and work with us quickly in the next 30 days or so, we can get you in on the initial submission. And then if you want to do a white label or rebrand on the post-quantum cert once we have it, it's only a paperwork exercise once the cert's issued. We will be still offering our OE editions in post, just like we always have for all of our certificates. And of course, you can then, once your OE is on the cert, you can still use our white label or rebrand service after that as well. For the level 2 and level 3 submissions, so BYOH is bring your own hardware, and you provide the hardware. We will provide the software and the expertise. So we now have level 2 and level 3 compliant features like authentication, user roles, plus obviously the 140-3 compliant cryptography. We also have, for level 3, instead of username and password authentication, we do public key pair authentications like a common access card used by the military, or a CAC card as they often refer to it. We can do CAC card authentication versus username and password for level 3. We leverage our expertise, and we'll take your hardware and our software through the program at whatever level you require. We are not offering level 4 at this time, but we do have all the tools to test level 2 and 3. So, as far as the custom tuned full submissions on demand, so we just recently had a conversation with a customer, and I've got it summarized here below. But we're going to begin offering custom tuned modules. So we have a certificate right now that has, gosh, I don't know, 20, 30 different algorithms, modes, key sizes, and any combination thereof. We can take any one of those combinations and reduce them down to an isolated, consolidated module if you're running on a deeply embedded target and you just don't have the room to support the whole module as we've certified it today. We can absolutely remove all the peripheral algorithms that you don't plan on using, redefine the module boundary to be a much smaller subset, and then push a full submission through pretty rapidly because the FIPS labs that we work with are already familiar with our modules. So if we tell them, look, we're just removing algorithms, we're not adding any new functionality, we're not doing anything different, it'll be very little lab time and testing time, and it'll basically be a rapid submission. And now that they have the SP 800-140BR1, which is the automated submission process, we've been seeing those automated submissions to the CMVP being approved in 6 months-ish. So they're going much quicker than submitting the old way, the manual way, through the non-140BR1 program. And this is the conversation we had. So a customer came to us and they said, hey, I want ECDSA for a secure bootloader, and that's it. I don't want anything else. And we said, okay, that's no problem, but ECDSA has this dependency on the hash DRBG to get its entropy when it's doing sign operations, and the DRBG depends on SHA-256, the conditioning element. And we said, is that okay? And they said, no, we don't want signing capability. We just need to verify the images that are coming in. And so we said, okay, that's fine, great. So what are you verifying with? You have to hash the image and then verify that hash. And they said it's SHA-2512. And we're only using the curve 521R1. And so we got them a custom build that only has SecP 521R1, ECDSA, and SHA-2512. It's under 30K. It's a very small image size, and they want to push that through a full submission. So that's kind of what triggered this offering of this new service. And if you have any use cases like that, just let us know and we'll get it done. Now into the OEs. So we just completed our first OE edition after receiving our certificate 4718 last July. It did take, unfortunately, we received our cert on July 11th. I want to say, yeah, 7/11. So on July 11th, and then we got the first OE editions were finally approved on May 16th of this year. So that did take quite a while. Unfortunately, because we dealt with, as we were going through the testing and wrapping up the testing and getting ready to submit to the CMVP in October of last year, then the CMVP changed all the submission requirements and said, you have to retest everything from the ground up. So then we had to basically scrub all the testing we'd done up till October. The lab took a month to react to the changes from the CMVP. We began retesting in November, and then we completed the retesting in January, submitted, I believe, on February 12th. So yeah, the lab, we finished the testing in January, but then the lab wanted a couple of weeks to do their quality assurance reviews before they submitted to the CMVP. Got submitted on February 12th and then approved on May 16th. So it took about 3 months and 4 days for the approval. And these were the OEs that got added to our Cert 4718 as a result of that effort. We will be sending these slides out after the webinar. So if you want to go through these more meticulously, you can. These are also published on our website and on Certificate 4718 on the NIST website. These are the ones that are in process as we speak. So we've got 50, I believe, in this upcoming batch, number 2. And again, you can scan these after the presentation if you want to see them in more detail. And then the planned OE editions, these are not listed in as great of detail yet because some of the details are still in flux. Like we have some customers that haven't decided on, are they going to upgrade to Android 13 or are they going to stick on Android 12, or maybe they're going to jump to 15, and they will lock in those details as we begin the testing with the lab. So these will be coming once this batch has been submitted. We will start finalizing all the details for these OEs. But we have a general sense of the operating systems we'll be testing. We know there will be multiple versions of Android, a Windows 22 server in there. We're going to be doing a Windows 10 and a Windows 11. We've got Integrity OS. We think it's, actually no, the customer has not told us which version they think it's going to be yet. VxWorks 7.0 for sure is locked in, the Vortex scheduler. Anyways, you can scan this slide after the show. And then here's all the chips that we know of specifically, and then there may be others that are coming. We'll see. But these are the ones that we know of for now. As far as OE testing goes, the service that we're offering, not everyone's aware, but there are some vendors out there, some software vendors that will get a certificate and they'll test a couple different Linux flavors, maybe a Windows and maybe a Mac OS version. And then they'll just offer rebranding or white labeling for that. And they won't offer to do custom OEs if you need them. So where we can handle tiny little embedded targets all the way up to the biggest backend server you can imagine, um, our competition will not always offer that service, and they will only offer rebranding or white labeling of their certificate with their OEs on it. And what that can often mean is you'll go to bid on a government contract and they'll look up your certificate, even though it's been white labeled in your name. They'll say, wait a minute, we're running on this operating system and this silicon, and we don't see that on this certificate. And the end result is a negative outcome on the contract bid. And then those customers will come back to us and say, I guess we need a custom OE after all in order to make this contract. So unfortunately, it does cost a little bit more if you take that route, because you'll end up paying our competitors for their white label, and then you'll have to come back to us in the end for an OE edition. And that isn't in all cases. We're mostly talking like the battlefield devices that are deployed in battlefield spaces. The maritime operations like nuclear submarines especially is a really big one, where we've seen a lot of lost contracts on white labeling. Because the nuclear submarines are so sensitive, they really care about what's on that certificate before they'll accept it for use on their boat. And some other stuff. And we've also seen, some of our customers have great success with white labeling. So it really just comes down to what the FIPS requirements are for the program and what's required to close on that contract. And our guarantee is that you'll have no issues with us. There will be no question. If you go with the white label, you may have issues on certain programs. But we test everything. Everything's submitted through the CMVP formally, and everything's formally approved. So, and that kind of concludes our presentation. So if there are any questions, we would love to hear them at this point. Tried to keep this brief so we didn't tie up a whole hour today, but that's where we're at, and that's what we're working on and doing.
Wonderful. Thank you, Caleb. Is there a roadmap or other estimate of when the planned OE additions are anticipated to be added?
The planned OE additions, yes. So right now, our timeline for batch 2 is we're already doing the paperwork with the lab as we speak. Testing is supposed to kick off in the next 2 weeks, I believe. We'll start testing on these guys. And then we plan to have these submitted to the CMVP by August. That's the current goal. And then, so that would mean we'd begin the paperwork and testing for these guys, the planned OE editions, sometime in August or September.
Wonderful. How long will the PQ submission take to be approved?
At the moment, like I said, the SV800 140BR1, the automated submissions, which is how we will be submitting the PQ, those are taking on average 6 months to be approved. It's much more rapid than the old manual submissions, which often sit in like coordination or review pending. That's the big one. They sit in review pending for like a year before the CMVP even starts looking at them, where it seems like they are highly prioritizing the 140BR1 submissions, and those are going through much, much quicker. So that's our guess is, if we get it submitted before the end of the year, we could see it approved by as early as June of next year.
Awesome. Will it be possible to add OEs to the PQ certificate once wolfSSL has obtained it?
Yes, absolutely. Sorry, I think I had that in the slide deck. So yeah, we will absolutely be offering OE additions once we get the post-quantum submission.
Great. If future PQ algorithms get approved, what is the wolfSSL schedule to adopt and validate those to FIPS 140-3?
As rapidly as we can. So like with the PQ stuff, I guess kind of our history there is, we started supporting an algorithm called ntrue as far back as 2012, and we've always been on the cusp of what's happening with post-quantum. And once MLChem, MLDSA, when they came out, they were called crystals dilithium and crystals kyber. And there were some open source repositories, I think it was called liboqs, that had them implemented. And so we instantly, I think we had support for those within 2 weeks of liboqs being released. And then we immediately started work on our own native implementations of them, which took us about 6 months to complete. And then as soon as the 6 months arrived, we basically put liboqs into a backseat. You can still build and use liboqs with our library. You have to jump through some extra hoops to disable our native algorithms and then turn on support for liboqs. It's a little more difficult now, but it's still there. And then we have our native implementations as well. And so we will do the same with every post-quantum algorithm that is approved by NIST in the future.
Awesome. Well, I think that wraps up the questions. Thank you, Kaleb, for hosting an informative webinar. Oh, I lied. One more came in. Do you offer assistance in getting DRBG and TRNGs certified also?
Oh, fantastic question. Yes, so that brings up, there is this other program called the ESV validation program, entropy source validation. And yeah, we are absolutely offering the same services we do for our FIPS certificates. We're offering the same services for ESV where they have comparability. And what I mean by that is, for example, you can get an ESV certificate on custom software, custom OS and silicon. You can add OEs to that certificate over time, but you can't rebrand ESV certificates. There's no concept of a rebrand there yet. So we don't offer the white label rebrand service there, but we offer the OE edition service there. And yeah, we will gladly help you get an ESV certificate if you need that.
Okay, the questions are rolling in now. When do the quantum resistant protocols become fully supported and not labeled as experimental?
Is that a question as far as the CMVP goes, or as far as our library goes? I'm so sorry.
No, you're good. I'll let you know if they follow up. Can
Okay.
wolfSSL certified ThreadX RTOS?
Yes, we've done ThreadX in the past. Yep.
Wonderful. And it was for wolfSSL and wolfcrypt.
Okay, yeah, so I do believe we still have them listed as experimental. That'll change as soon as we get our first run of CABP vectors, CABP vectors, and we're confident that the solutions are passing everything the government has to throw at them. We'll move those from experimental to feature ready or production ready.
Wonderful. All right. If there are any additional questions, feel free to reach out to us via fax@wolfssl.com. But thank you everyone for joining. I will email a copy of the webinar recording and PDF slides. You can keep up with our upcoming events, meet our team in person, read our blog posts, and get the latest wolfSSL updates by following us on X, connecting with us on LinkedIn, and subscribing to our YouTube channel. If you have any questions, please reach out to us at fax@wolfssl.com. Thank you again, and we look forward to seeing you on June 11th for our webinar on wolfSSL solutions for the AMD Xilinx UltraScale Plus, MPSoC, and Versal for the APAC time zone. Thank you.
Thanks, Emma. Thank you, everyone.